Hi, welcome back to Mr. Mig's Classroom. I'm Mr. Mig, and today I want to continue down my law series and talk about a legal question. Specifically, today I want to talk about engagement rings. So what happens if a man proposes to a woman and they decide, and she says yes, but then they decide not to get married? Who gets to keep the ring? Does it matter if the man's the one who breaks off the marriage or breaks off the engagement before the wedding? Or does it, or does that not matter whether it's the man or the woman who breaks it off? Well, this is what we're going to look at today. So before we get started, first I want to say I am not a lawyer. I'm a law student in my second year of law school. And so therefore I'm not giving any legal advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. With that said, now let's get into our legal question that we're talking about today. About engagement rings. So first I want to talk about the general rule. So who gets to keep the ring, the man or the woman? Now I recognize that not all engagements are between a man and a woman. Some might be between a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, or there might even be some situations where a woman gives a man a ring. I've never heard of a woman giving a man a ring, but if you have, put it in the comment section below. I'd love to hear about it. But for this video, if I say the donor or the person giving the ring, I'm going to refer to that as the man, and the woman I'm going to refer to as the person who's receiving the ring, or otherwise known as the donee, just to make it easy to follow along with the video. So let's start off with the general rule. Who gets to keep the ring? Sorry to tell you, ladies, but generally the modern view is the man gets to keep the ring regardless of who breaks off the engagement. Whether he breaks off the engagement or whether he's at fault for breaking off the engagement is irrelevant. Courts generally, and we'll see some exceptions, but generally they don't want to get into that. So I'm going to read a short passage from a case book I have, a law book. It's the Templin's Contracts, a Modern Case Book, and where they talk about rings. So the first thing about engagement rings that we have to understand is that it's a conditional gift as opposed to just being a gift. I'll get into a later video what the difference between a gift and a conditional gift is. But mostly in this video, what I want you to understand is that a conditional gift has a condition, right? Meaning that if the gift's given, then in the case of an engagement ring, there's a condition subsequent. So something has to happen next in order for that person, the woman in this case, to keep the ring. So she doesn't just get to keep it. It's not a regular gift. There's a condition. And in this case, in an engagement ring, the condition is the wedding. It's the marriage. So it's not just So this is not just a gift. It's a promise to get married. When the woman accepts the ring, she's promising to marry the man. And so if the wedding doesn't occur, then that gift gets broken. That conditional gift, that gets broken, and then the ring has to go back to the man because it was given under the idea of that commitment of getting married. It wasn't just an ordinary gift. So with that said, I'm going to read shortly from the case book. So engagement rings, gift or conditional gift. One interesting application of the conditional gift doctrine involves engagement rings given in contemplation of marriage. Disputes arise when one party, the donor, or the man, as we're going to use in this case, gives a ring to the other party, the woman. And subsequently, either one or both decide to call the wedding off. Who gets to keep the ring? The donee, the woman, might argue that the ring was a gift already given, and therefore the donee should be able to keep the ring. However, most jurisdictions give the giving of the ring as a conditional gift. Under this view, the event that comprises the condition is the act of getting married. Although the donee, the woman, is in possession of the ring prior to the marriage, the gift is only considered given when the marriage occurs. So therefore, the title to the ring transfers to the woman on the day of the wedding, not on the day of the engagement. That's the important part of that. So if the marriage does not occur, then the donor, the man, may recover the ring. He's allowed to get the ring back. So in the past, it was traditional that if the man broke off the wedding, then he didn't get the ring back. But the modern view now is that the courts don't want to decide this. And as we'll see in our second case, the court says this, they don't want to be the one to decide who is at fault. Because just because one party breaks off the wedding or the engagement doesn't mean that person was at fault. Maybe they broke it off because the other party cheated on them, and that's why they didn't want to get married anymore. So who's at fault there? The person who broke off the wedding or the engagement, or the person who cheated that caused this other person to break off the engagement, right? So the courts are just like, we're not getting involved in this. We don't want to try to determine who's at fault and who's not. It's a conditional gift. If the wedding doesn't occur, then the condition didn't get completed and the ring goes back to the man. That's what most jurisdictions say, as we'll see in our first case. But keep in mind, folks, general rule doesn't mean all states follow that. So let's look at a state that does. First, I want to look at the court case from the state of Virginia, the Supreme Court of Virginia, in the year 2016, decided McGrath versus Dockendorf. So in this case, Julia McGrath and Ethan Dockendorf were going to get married. So in August of 2012, Ethan Dockendorf proposed to Julia McGrath. So I'll just call them Julia and Ethan at this point. But then a year later, Ethan, the man, broke off the engagement with the woman, with Julia. And he had given her a $26,000 ring. I think that's pretty expensive, but I don't know. Put in the comment section if you think that's pretty normal. I think that's an expensive ring, $26,000. But I don't know. Maybe that's why I'm not married. That's crazy to me. Actually, if you're a man, put in the comment section how much you spent on the ring. If you're a woman, put in the comment section how much you expect a man to spend on a ring. I'm curious after reading these two cases and seeing how much they spent on their rings. Okay, so he broke it off with her. She's like, I'm keeping the ring. He's like, no, you're giving me my $26,000 ring back, or you're paying me $26,000. Goes to court, and then it got appealed to the Supreme Court. So the court sided with the man, and then it got appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court again sided with the man. The Supreme Court said, look, this was a conditional gift. It wasn't a gift. You didn't have the wedding. It doesn't matter that he broke it off or not. The wedding didn't occur, and the wedding was the condition, and that's when the title of the ring transfers from the man to the woman. And so therefore, because the wedding never occurred and you never got married, then the ring goes back to the man. And I should not say wedding, because you might get married without a wedding. Really, I should just say marriage. The marriage didn't occur, so therefore the ring goes back to the man because the condition was never completed. And the title of the ring therefore never transferred. And so Julia had to give the ring back, or she was allowed to pay $26,000, the value of the ring, back to him. It never says, it's a court case, so it never says which one she chose. But she was required to either pay the full value of the ring or give it back. Now, gentlemen, don't let that fool you. Just because that one case in Virginia says that's the rule, and just because that's the general rule, and in most jurisdictions, the majority of jurisdictions, that is the rule. If the marriage doesn't occur, the ring goes back to the man. But that doesn't mean that's in every jurisdiction. Again, we're the United States, and every state has its own laws. Every state is an independent jurisdiction. So some states differ from others. And you might want to keep that in mind when you're proposing to someone, because if you get married in a state that has a different jurisdiction and then you think that you get the ring back, you could give it a big surprise, just like Michael Albringer did when he proposed to Michelle Harris. This is from the Montana Supreme Court case from 2002. So we have Michael and Michelle here, and they get engaged, and then they break it off. Now, this was a really messy one, actually. It might be interesting to read if you're interested in court cases. So they went back and forth and back and forth. He also gave a really expensive ring. It was a $29,000 ring. So he broke it off, and then they got back together, and it just went back and forth and back and forth. That actually wasn't the issue here. It didn't matter that she gave the ring back at some points, or he physically took the ring back at some points. None of that really mattered. What really mattered was Montana's law is different. So in the Montana Supreme Court case here from 2002, They basically say that in Montana, the rule is that gifts are irrevocable, with the exception of causa mortis gifts, which I'll get into a different video. But basically that means a gift given under the peril of death. So if you think you're going to die and you give somebody something, you know, in your last, or you think to be your last words, here, I want you to have this, and you give them whatever, a signed baseball card from Babe Ruth. Oh, I want you to have this because you love Babe Ruth so much, and then you don't die, you're allowed to take it back under Montana law. But that's it. Anything that's not under the peril of death, you can't give back, including engagement rings. And this 2002 Supreme Court case is the first time they say they ran into it since they had that law that passed. So they had a law that specifically passed that said, hey, marriage, there's no, it essentially said that marriage, reliance on marriage was not a reason to be able to get a gift back. And it wasn't specifically talking about rings. It was actually more about like a gender equality law, and they talk about that in here as well. So anyway, the point is here in the Montana case, Michael was not able to recover his $29,000 ring. Michelle got to keep it because the Montana law said, hey, once you give somebody something, they get to keep it unless it's that situation of under the peril of death. Now, one of the other things that they brought up, which I thought was interesting here, was that they recognized that this was an engagement ring. It was given as an engagement ring. That was not the dispute here. It wasn't the dispute of that they broke it off multiple times. They broke up multiple times and got back together multiple times. That didn't matter. It was the fact that the legislature barred access to the courts for actions arising from the breach of the promise of marriage. That was it. The other thing that they talked about here is that if a woman were to try to sue and say that she spent money on the venue hall and she spent money on a dress that she can't return, or she spent money on other things for preparing for the wedding, and then the wedding gets called off, the marriage gets broken off, she doesn't get to go and sue him for those things. So why should Michael be able to get the money for the ring back? Now the court goes on to say that was that gender neutrality was a big issue because they claim, and this is the court claiming, it's not me, that the woman most of the time spends the money on the wedding, on again the venue hall and all those other things. Weddings are expensive. I've heard of cases where maybe the woman doesn't pay for the wedding, but according to the court, most of the time it is the woman paying for it. So to keep it neutral, that's how they saw it. The woman has to pay for the wedding. She won't get those costs back, so why should the man get the cost of the ring back? Some might see it differently because the woman actually gets to physically keep the ring and the man's not keeping the dress or the venue hall, right? So that might be why certain jurisdictions see that one differently. Anyway, so to wrap this video up, the reality is you got to know what jurisdiction you're in. Now again, like I said, the majority rule and the general rule is like the one held in Virginia from that 2016 case where, yeah, even if the man breaks it off, the woman has to give the ring back. But that doesn't mean every state follows that. So gentlemen, know what state you're in. What I would really like to know, and I don't know the answer to this one, is let's say you're from Virginia, a couple's from Virginia, and they go to Montana on vacation, and they go to Glacier National Park, and a man proposes to the woman on a mountain in Glacier National Park and gives her the ring there, and then they go back to Virginia, and months later they call off the marriage. Then does she have to give the ring back? Because are they under the Virginia law where they're from, or are they under the Montana law where they were physically at when the ring was exchanged, or are they under federal law because they were in a federal national park? I don't know. If you're interested in that one, put it in the comments section below and I'll do some research on it and then I'll do another video on it. But that's all for today's video. I really appreciate you watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, put them in the comments section. And again, thanks for watching Mr. Mig's Classroom. I'll see you next time.